call this meeting a session, and whatever we've done or dispensed with all of the formalities, the pledge of allegiance, and the implications and things like that, goes straight into the budget hearing and associated information. So, item number one is discuss the 2022-23 holiday schedule.
So we had it in the budget, we just wanted to put it back on here in case there was any questions. Nothing has changed on it. We did add the little blurb at the bottom, which was the state law on public safety for September 11th. Simply put, it's public safety can rotate a holiday from any other holiday, or they can use vacation, so long as it doesn't interfere with their scheduled days. So we just added that blurb on it. But other than that,
And that's for the September 11th
for the
holiday you're
September
talking about,
11th,
yeah.
yes.
And it actually says they're supposed to take that.
So they are, but the way the law specifically is because obviously if the entire department took off, then there would be no coverage. So the law does state that they can, so long as they have to, they do, but it's not an additional holiday. It's just a rotate holiday or vacation time, so long as it doesn't interfere with staff.
Do I hear a motion to accept, I guess resolution, it doesn't show the resolution, but do we accept the holiday schedule as presented?
We accept it as is.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes if it were a motion. Next one is the compensation, discuss and consider compensation study. Dalton, this is yours, and take it from there.
Is Lori calling in, Matt, or Chief?
Sure, she's on.
Show she's on?
She's not in this meeting that you set up.
So while they're kind of working through that, this sheet right here, the proposed pay grades, let's at least start here. Once Lori gets on, we can get her up and running. She'll dive into the details of the process. So we exposed this to council during the kind of the budget piece of it. So really, I mean, I'd say let's kind of start here with some of the questions if there are any, and then of course we'll dive further into it, as this develops. As far as the pay grades, the pay grades in basically this chart outside of the average tenure, which is in the middle. Average tenure is roughly about 5 to 6 years. That includes the outliers and doesn't include the outliers, so there's a small range. That's all these grades were implemented, throughout the study. Again, on the study, there was, and again, she'll go into more detail on the process, but we had 16 out of the 20 survey places respond. One of the handouts that you got is a geographical factor, which is actually not titled, but if you look at the far right column, the geo factor. She'll explain it a little bit better, but the geo factor basically factors in, for example, City of Temple obviously is a large entity. So they're not going to take that entity at 100%, they're just going to take it at a geographical factor based off of size, budget, population, insert other factors that, that the experts in that field are looking at. Any questions on that so far?
Did you say, when you said you threw out the long-term, the years of long-term service for this purpose of the?
Yes, so.
Did you throw out the ones that were a year or less to kind of?
So yeah, so we had a couple employees that were kind of under that year mark, 0.6 or 0.7. So we rounded those up to at least 1. So everybody who is an employee here was at the 1 year mark. What we did to again figure out that equitability as we go through this process, because this is not an overnight, a 1 year thing. Yes, the big chunk of it, the sticker shock, is this year. Going forward, phase 2, we'll call it, is the incentives, the license, figure out that'll be workshops, next year. With the years of service, what we did, even though we kind of looked at, we'll call it a 20-year kind of phase, we chose the 20-year because it minimized the annual impact while we figure this whole process out. And that way, folks weren't getting maxed out. If we only did like an 8-year stat, folks weren't getting maxed out right out of the gate. So with that, we took tenure, because we had a lot of folks that we do have some folks that have some tenure, And so it was not years of service, we did it based off of years in position. So if somebody had been here for 18 years, but only in, a director role or a role for 10 of those years, we did it at 10 years. What we did to kind of across the board is in those years in position, so we get a good idea, we capped everything at 10. So if somebody was here 20 years, I would obviously put them at the highest, call it step for lack of better terms, but that could max them out. So we went right at 10 for anybody who was going to hit that 10-year threshold and beyond. And then that way, each year, we continue to reassess this process with council, through workshops, through incentive programs, and figure out where we are. We'll kind of dive into the big sheet real quick. I at least want to highlight one section. We'll talk about current salaries, where we're at now. If you look into the years in position, to the left, you'll see job title, employee number, years in position, annualized salary. That is our current salaries this year. Yes, we did put, the proposed ones in there as quote-unquote current. However, they're only current because we put them into the budget and they're not part of that 10%. They were already built into the budget under the salary piece, as the proposed budget, not part of the 10%. So if we actually took those out, the calculations would reflect a false negative, which would then increase the implementation cost. So we didn't want to do that, so just be aware that those numbers are in there because they were already budgeted in there, but if we did remove them, it would obviously change the whole budget itself. Lori, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So I'll let kind of Lori take over. Lori and her team, are the one that conducted, the process, the data, really helped develop and get, we'll say this kind of proposed plan, a range, that way, council can see, where taxpayer dollars are going, how they're being spent on our employees, and how that's contributing to our taxpayers. And so Lori has a presentation. She's going to go through kind of the process and the data and how we kind of came about it, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Dalton. I'm going to go ahead and, can I share my screen for the
You should be able to.
slide deck?
I'm having a hard time.
It's saying it is disabled.
Hey, Chief, can you check the screen share disabled?
Try it now.
Okay, yeah, there we go. Perfect. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. All right, well, thank you. Today, I would like to just walk you through the study objectives that we were given along with our key deliverables, how we kicked off the project, how we went about doing the market survey, what we are proposing for structures and implementation strategies, as well as some ongoing guidelines for pay administration. So with regards to objectives and key deliverables, we always start off projects identifying what an organization's pay strategy is. So we met with the project team to talk about pay strategy, who does the city compete with for talent, and that was in identifying the labor market. We created a custom survey and distributed that. From there, we developed a proposed pay plan, identified some preliminary costs associated with implementation, and then talked about a way to maintain the system moving forward. So I'm going to go through each of these in a little bit more detail. But throughout the entire process, we had key deliverables that we provided to the city, as well as frequent communication feedback loops as we went through the project. So the first thing that we do is basically a high-level organizational assessment to understand where is the organization at today and where do they desire to be in the future. I'm sorry, did someone say something?
No.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. And then we also tried to identify the comparator labor market. So the comparator labor market is primarily focused around who does the city compete with for talent? Where do they lose people to? Where do they get people from? What are other like organizations that are within a close proximity to the city? And we also want to look at cities that have similar budget, population, employee count. And it's a combination of all of those three. They're not all mutually, you don't have to meet all three criteria in order to be considered part of the comparator labor market. So based on that, these are the organizations that we surveyed. We only did not receive responses from 3 organizations. So overall, we had an 82% response rate, which is really good given the time that we're in right now. For department directors, we did exclude in our analysis the cities of Belton, Georgetown, Killeen, Taylor, Temple, and Waco due to their size. We wanted to create a more apples-to-apples approach with regards to size. We then identified the benchmark jobs. There were 29, and that was all of the jobs at the city. And of those 29 jobs, there were 2 in which we didn't receive sufficient information. When I say sufficient information, standard guidelines in conducting a salary survey is that you need to have 5 data points in order to analyze the data and draw conclusions from it. So those 2 jobs, the Administrative Services Director and the Marina Manager, were the 2 jobs that we did not receive at least 5 matches in the market.
Lori, how many did
Once
you
we got everyone's surveys back, we vetted the data. We go through an extensive data validation process. From those organizations, we did collect. For all of the benchmark jobs, we created a definition of the essence of the job along with minimum qualifications. And then we asked the comparator organizations to provide us with information on jobs that were at least a 70% match to jobs in their organization. So we asked for things like job title, the number of incumbents, is the job exempt or non-exempt, how long have the people been in the roles, what are the base hours of work, because we want to make sure that we're using similar hours. We need to adjust data if it's not the standard 80-20. We often see that in the area of fire, where it's a different number of hours worked and sometimes police. We asked for actual salary data as well as salary range information. As part of our validation, we do an outlier analysis to identify any extreme data. Extreme data is anything that's plus or minus 2 standard deviations off the mean. We also looked at the job titles. Whenever we had questions where something looked unusual, we did follow up with the organizations to get clarification. So when we look at the city's information compared to the market, we use what's called a market indice that tells us how far aligned, how far off the market is the city. And at 100%, that means you are spot on with the market. Ideally, we want to be within 90 to 110% of market when we make our recommendations. So anything less than 100% is considered lagging the market. Anything greater than 100% is considered leading the market. Where we get concerned is when we see anything less than 90% or greater than 110%. And through the market study, we want to resolve those anomalies of being so far off of the market. So how did the city fare? When we compiled all of the data, we broke it into multiple groups. And we were looking at the median of actual salaries and comparing that information with the information of the city's information. Since no formal salary structure exists today, we didn't have that as a comparison point. So we utilize those market actual salaries against other actual salaries to see how aligned the city is with market. And here's what we found. We broke it into 3 different groups. There's the general group, which encompasses most of the employees. And when we looked at the city's information against the aggregate of the comparator market for all jobs combined, we saw that the city was had a market indice of 92.9%. It's pretty good. Some jobs were further higher than market, greater than 100%. Some were lower than 100%. When we looked at sworn fire and sworn police, that's where that we found that the city was significantly misaligned with the market. Sworn fire was coming out at 70.7% compared to the market, and sworn police was coming out at 80.7%. So those 2 groups were well beyond the lower 90% threshold that we want the city to be at. So based on that information for the 3 separate groups, we created some salary structures with the data that we collected. So in developing the salary structure, we looked at the lowest actual salary in the market and the highest market salary in the market. And we developed a consistent 15% spread from one grade to the next. So between grade 1 and grade 2, there's a 15% spread from midpoint to midpoint. And we followed that methodology in building the entire structure. Then we also, the range with regards to the width of the range, and the width of the range is simply the distance between the range minimum and the range maximum. Those varied between 45% to 55%. We also try to align the range widths with the market as well. At the lower grades, we developed 45% range spreads, and at the higher grades, we incorporated 55% range widths. Then we, once we developed the structure, we aligned jobs into the salary grades based on the range midpoint that was closest to the market 50th percentile of actual salaries. When we did not have market data available, for example, those 2 jobs that we didn't get enough information on, we took into consideration internal equity and made some recommendations as to where we thought they should be placed in the overall structure. With regards to employee pay impact, that's the next step that you do in the process. We recommend that based on the grades that jobs were slotted in, that any incumbent be paid, their pay be brought up to at least the minimum of their respective salary range, and that anyone who is over the maximum of the range be held and not provide additional adds to base. There are other ways to recognize employees who are over the range maximum. We are recommending also that pay adjustments be made to those employees whose pay fell within their respective range. And there are 1,000 ways to incorporate that. And we have done some initial looking at what that would look like. But the key thing about moving everyone within their respective ranges is that the city utilize a consistent methodology for all employees. The only time we recommend that no pay adjustments be made is if someone is not performing. Then when it comes to the sworn non-management jobs, these were the police and fire jobs. We utilize range minimums in the market at the 50th percentile to establish the range minimum for those jobs. For ranks beyond police officer and fire specialist, we took into consideration that there is minimal to no overlap between the ranges given the type of structure that are found in police and fire organizations. There's a significant difference in the work that is performed in most organizations do not like to have any compression in those ranks. With regards to the employee pay impact, we're recommending the same thing that we did for the general employees, is that all employees be brought up to at least the minimum of their respective salary grade, and pay adjustments be made for those folks who are already in the range. For both the general and the sworn, the reason that it's important to also consider where folks are who are already within the range is that if you don't, what ends up happening sometimes is that brand new employees who are new to the organization, new to their role, end up being paid the same as someone who may have been in their role for 5 years. So it creates a lot of dissatisfaction, so we recommend that other employees be adjusted as well. So with regards to cost implementation, there are some considerations that we provided to the city. First, no employee would be paid less than the range minimum for their assigned job. No employee's pay would decrease as a result of this study. So if someone is currently paid significantly high in the market, what we recommend is you just hold on their base pay and until the market catches up to them. We also recommend utilizing the standard approach when transitioning employees into the new salary ranges. Now, given cost considerations, it is possible that the initial cost for the city is more than the city can bear in 1 year. A 2-year phased approach is also acceptable. We usually do not recommend longer than 2 years. Things can change drastically, and clients that we've had that have used like a 3 to 4 year approach in implementation, and then weren't able to follow through all the way through the 4-year implementation plan, it created a lot of problems for them organizationally, a lot of dissatisfaction with employees, and which resulted in some retention problems. So that's why we recommend no more than a 2-year approach for implementation. And when we originally had put together some costs, it was a point in time, and so we know that between the time that we calculated some preliminary implementation costs to the time the city implements the plan, there are going to be changes. So we'll let the city address any of those specific costs. We also have some guidelines for ongoing administration of the pay plan. The city's invested time, resources, and money in developing this, going out and having this study done. So it's never a one and done once you develop your pay structures. You want to make sure that you're remaining competitive with the market. And in order to do that, it's important that annual adjustments be made to salary structures. And those adjustments, so the salary ranges, those adjustments should be predicated on changes in the cost of labor in the marketplace. That will help to ensure that you remain externally competitive. We also recommend annual increases to employee pay whenever possible. And further, we recommend that the city do a compensation study similar to this, but usually it's a lot quicker because we've already, identified the organizations, we know the jobs. So basically, it's a refresh every 3 years, and the purpose of that is to actually go out, collect the data from your comparators, and assess: have you maintained the level of competitiveness in the market that where you want to be. So this just is a validation, and if the market has changed, that's when you can make adjustments. Usually at this 3-year mark, when you go out and do the survey again, the cost should be relatively nominal to the city because you've already established it, you've been maintaining it, and now this 3-year survey is basically a litmus test to see how you've maintained your relative position in the market. So, anyway. That concludes the presentation about what we did and how we went about it and what we found. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
We're unmuted?
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah. One question I had is during the analysis, were benefits considered as part of the compensation package?
In this study, we did not look at benefits. We recommend that organizations, I know that makes up the total compensation package, which is a very important communication tool for employees. But we recommend that organizations analyze pay and benefits separately and communicate them collectively to employees. Without a competitive pay system, you can't get people in the door to know how good the benefits might be. And then once you have competitive pay and you get people in the organization, it's important that your benefits are good, so you can it's a retention tool to help employees stay as well. But for this study, we solely looked at base pay.
I just want to clarify a couple of things. So, Lori, from what I'm hearing you say, the salaries that we were paying, the ones prior to the adjustments, that in general we were 92.2 overall, with the exception of the fire being low and the police being below that 90% mark. One was 70.7, one was 80.7. Is that correct?
Correct.
So overall, the salaries we were paying were pretty much in line except for fire and police. Okay, and the other thing, I'm sorry I didn't hear you. You said there were 2 positions that you couldn't find matches for. And what were those positions?
The 2 positions were the Administrative Services Director and the Marina Manager. We just did not get 5 matches from the other organizations.
So how did you arrive at comparables for both those positions?
We looked at internal equity and the job descriptions to slot them.
Okay. And then could you tell us once again, it was kind of a little fast. I know you said you eliminated the city of Waco for this study, the city of Killeen for this study. What were the other cities?
For the department director pay, we excluded Belton, Georgetown, Killeen, Taylor, Temple, and Waco.
But you said
We
that
used them for the other non-management jobs, though.
Okay, so you're saying, what position was it you looked at that for?
The department directors.
Department directors, okay.
Correct.
So every other position, you did consider those, you did look at the study of Waco and Taylor and all those Killeen, all those larger cities?
Yes, we did. For individual contributor types of roles, the work is similar. Usually for the larger organizations, the reason we would exclude those from department directors is their scope of responsibility is much larger. But an individual contributor at a smaller city versus a larger city, if they're doing the same work, then we consider them to be worthy of comparison.
Okay. That's what I heard.
Anybody else any questions? Larry, Robbie, John? Bruce, did you get yours answered to your satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, I just know that in large corporations, we look at benefits as a part of the salary compensation package. It would be, is it a fair statement to say that different cities would have different compensation packages?
Yes, that would be fair to say. You know, and perhaps a good recommendation, you know, because the city didn't have any salary ranges to start with, and that's what we were working on developing, the base pay piece. Perhaps in 3 years, if the city goes out to check the base pay, that might be a good time to incorporate some benefits questions to assess how competitive the city is in that regard. Or you could also do a separate study on benefits.
And also too, we assessed the benefit piece, but we knew this was obviously something that council was gonna kind of, be on the fence on getting this comp study done in the first place. We knew the cost was gonna increase by adding the benefits to it. City of Belton and some other cities who do comp studies, we can kind of do a good comparison of where they are in the market. So we were able to kind of do our own assessment on the benefits piece with some of the recent data, because the benefit side didn't really change too much across the board other than health insurance really. And that's kind of just, all over. But for the most part, our benefits are comparable with others. But because of the unique nature of the study, we already kind of knew, the $23,000 price tag was going to kind of, be on the fence with some of the council members. We went ahead and left the benefits off to make sure that we did something equitable that council would be able to buy into.
Lori, were you also involved with establishing some of the new salaries that we have?
Yes, we were.
Okay.
Okay, I think if everybody's got your questions answered, Elton, you'll take it from there to move forward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura, for your
Thank you, Lori.
information.
Lori.
Thank you for our
Thank you very
last-
much. Thank you. Have a great evening. And welcome.
One thing about it, when we look at other cities, everybody's different. I mean, obviously we do that, so it's, and this was a third-party study, so we can't say, hey, y'all skewed this thing the way you wanted it to be turned out for your people. So it's, we got a pretty good cross-section on there. What we do with it from there is up to us.
I've got a couple of questions. One, I'm a little uncomfortable that we don't have better comparables for the marina manager, and then administrative service director, that was a position that you created.
And we took the administrative services director, especially in some of the smaller cities, even though there's not a lot, it's one of those positions that you can roll a lot of people, or a lot of hats under one role, versus having to hire multiple people. So that's an example where you don't have to have somebody over this, or like an admin assistant over marina and water and wastewater, or, you have somebody that can kind of be the foundation of, over court. So it is kind of a unique position, but we're not the only one that has done it. We kind of mirrored off some of the other cities.
And a concern I have, and I know she said we fell, I'm happy to hear we fell within the 92, so we're kind of right on, as far as mostly, except for the police and fire, so those are our exceptions. And I'm sure you've compensated them in this to get them up to about the same 92%, is that correct?
So the thing with the 92%, yes, she's right. When you look at percentages and averages, the more you have, and the more ranges you have, obviously the percentage is going to change. So when she was saying that we do have some that are 110, 115, and some that are 88, now that's a wide spread of average and median. So good segue into the large sheet. If you look at the annualized salary, and then you look to the right, it says, ratio midpoint to current. That shows the positions of where they are comparable to, below 90, above 90, or above 100, or above 110.
So what is, okay, because I'm going to ask the 92%, how does it correlate with this 86%?
So the 92% that she was giving is the entire citywide average. So, if you,
That's one.
yeah, sorry, citywide average, not sworn. So general
Well,
not.
so, to answer your question, Robbie, the 86% then also then has the chief of police and the fire chief in there.
Correct, and they're technically.
So then, and her numbers, they were down below, so you can't do a real easy apples to apples, but you can see
Okay,
it's
so
close. If you took them out and moved them down, that's where she's getting the sworn percentage.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, and so
Okay.
so when we broke this out, we wanted to show the current, ratio for the current to midpoint based off the current salaries, and then what it would be based off of the proposed salaries.
And another concern I have is, and I realize some of these salaries were probably above, but we have 10 positions in our city that are not getting any type of raise at all, nothing. And I'm kind of uncomfortable with that, with the economy the way it is and the inflation the way it is. They're at 0, and yet some of our upper positions are receiving 18 to 19, one of them 23%. And I realize we're trying to get those positions within the guidelines. I understand that. But I still have a little bit of a problem with not giving an employee. Now, if the position is changed, if their hours are not the same, if they're kind of working part-time, I understand that, and understand if the position's changed, yeah. We probably need to catch up, but on our employees, it just seems like, as a council person, I don't want to give the message that I'm not giving 10 people in our state. I'm not counting the new position, because I'm not for the new position. I'm just counting the employees we have right now have gotten 0. I'm a little uncomfortable with that. No, I'm very uncomfortable with that, actually. And then, the other thing is, and I think we can make that up within your budget, because, like, I'm looking at, and I'll name a name because it's particular. You said Joyce was retiring in September, so her salary won't even go into this next year. If we hire somebody to replace her, it won't be at the cost that a dedicated 16-year, if Joyce was in that position, I'd say absolutely, dedicated 16-year employee, but we're gonna start over with 0 again, and that increase in there is over 18%, 18.51. So I think we could take some of that and use it among the zeros. Okay, I'm sorry. So my concern is with the no. I just don't think the message we're sending is a good message when you're like, sorry, the only time we've ever frozen a salary in this city, and we've done studies, and we've done non-studies and steps, and we've done everything, and the only time we've done a freeze is when the economy said, like 2008, when all of us were frozen, the market was bad. I mean, when legitimately, but here we are, and we're doing well, and you're doing a great job, Dalton and Carrie, taking care of our finances for us. And I think we need to show them a little something in there.
Yeah. So and that's a great point. These were some of the challenges that we talked to most of y'all, with those who actually came and we were able to speak with. One of the challenges, and this is kind of the burden of the city manager, I guess you can say. At some point we got to rip the Band-Aid off. So the one side of it is absolutely right. Some of these salaries would not get any raises, potentially for a little bit of time. One of the things we kind of talked about was making sure that those salaries that were not getting anything were at least bumped up to, to the 90% or 95%. Doesn't mean they would get anything. So the flip side of that is, and I'll just use some numbers on here, if there's somebody that's $11,000 over market, over where we're at, then you go down to somebody who had been missing out on the $11,000 potentially. There's it's both sides. And so if we look at it from an equitable standpoint, somebody had been making $11,000 more compounded annually, over the course of time, versus somebody who has actually been missing out on their cost of living or, pay over the course of time, which is now we're trying to get them caught back up. So very tough decision on that. Carrie and I kind of weighed back and forth on it. And even though it can be challenging, especially with this economy, it's one of those things where we're looking at the big picture. And again, this is one of those situations where it is council's decision. The problem that you're going to run into is if we do get those salaries and we start putting raises onto those, now they're off. So now we're going to end up 5 years down the road, we're going to continue to run into that same problem where it's never going to balance out, where if we pull the Band-Aid off 1 year, let let the market do what it's gonna do, let the community or our city and our staff do what it's gonna do, it will balance itself out, and then it will become equitable. And so, it is a very tough pill to swallow. This is one of those ones that council has to decide. But when it comes to ripping the Band-Aid off, this is what that I'm recommending. Council, if they want to go a different direction, we can. Just know anything we do add to this, if we're $11,000 over on one and we add another $2,000 onto it, next year it's going to be the exact same thing, and it's going to continue to go down that road again.
But we also have to look and consider that the city clerk, I love them, that job would be easy to replace. Compared to like someone in the water department where they have to have so many certificates and they're very hard to find. How easy is it to replace a position?
And Sean, that's exactly the positions I'm looking at. We're expecting somebody to crawl down a hole in freezing weather, stand out in the heat for $35,876. It's just not right. I mean, and then to say, oh, we're freezing you because we can't get somebody, these positions are not positions you get somebody, you can, a lot of somebody's can fill. This is a very unique skill set that will do these things.
Donna, keep in mind, you're looking at 35,000, 36,000, that doesn't include any of the perks, as I understand.
Oh, I understand, Dennis,
And
but
so that
every
that
person,
goes up to about 50 grand.
But every person, but the benefits, every person in this city is
Well,
getting
understand.
33%. The more you make, the
Well,
more
and
you
that's where,
get.
and so this is why the study is great from an equitability standpoint. And that's why, Lori had pointed out about including those positions in everybody, in every city. Because if an employee in the water department goes to Temple, or goes to Belton, or goes to Salado, or goes anywhere, guess what they're gonna be looking at? That $35,000. So now you're starting to dive into the quality of life, you're diving into benefits, you're diving into this. So if we are comparable to those larger cities, that in and of itself is an equitable stance, because whether it's 35,000 here or whether it's 35,000 there, and to kind of put it into perspective, let's say that they're over market by $2,000 or $3,000. They're going to lose that market more than likely if they go over there, because they're already over the market, and whenever they go somewhere else. So one of the things that we are looking at, and what we wanted to do, and this goes into the next kind of discussion point, really the phase 2 piece of it. We really want to start focusing to, we've done this before to kind of adjust bases in previous years, but is taking license certifications, the motivational aspect to kind of learn more, professional development, i.e. Water 1, water license A, B, C, or whatever. Sorry, I'm butchering it, I know, but all the fancy alphabet, license, we can take those now and have a workshop with council to say, hey, what do we want? Where do we want these to be? Which is then an extra certification on top of their base pay. And then you're not trying to tie in the base pay just to that. You're tying the license into it. So right now, water department, typically does a 50-cent raise, for every license that they get. So it's about 1,040, give or take. So if you kind of made that across the board, those incentives are not tied into, those incentives aren't necessarily tied into the base salary, for COLAs. So you can add those additional incentives for those who are willing to and wanting to go out and get, have professional development and do more. So we can increase those kind of lower amounts, which then helps us be a little bit more competitive with some of these larger cities where they want to stay here on top of the other, we'll say, benefits and quality of life.
Because most of them are not in the mid-range, they're at the low range of even that chart. So I'm just, like I said, I'm not comfortable. I don't mind being a little over on those positions, because, this council continually talks about retaining employees. And so we don't want to get them trained and adjusted to our city and knowing where the lines are, knowing different maintenance things, and then having them leave us, even if they are going to make a similar salary. I seriously doubt that the city of Temple or Belton or any of those.
Donna, what do you suggest if you think that
Well,
are you looking for a minimum raise or increase across the board?
Yeah,
What is that number that?
Well, I mean, I haven't, we've got
I
a
mean,
finance
you're
director and
saying
engineer.
something.
I think it
You
needs
got
to
a
be,
number?
I think it needs to be $100 a month, at least, for an increase in these positions. I don't think we should give, we do this study to help our employees, and then, we're gonna tell 10 people, you're frozen, you're frozen, you're frozen, in an economy that the cost of living has gone up 10%, but we're freezing you because of the salary that you make is too much, and then smaller city, they've got to wear a lot of different hats. They do a lot of different jobs. And when I'm looking across here, seeing, you know, like upper management, and please believe me, I'm not saying it's not deserving, but I'm saying upper management is in the 16, 18, 20%. It's hard, I would think, as an employee to swallow. We're getting zero increase. I mean, the study was
Well,
meant
it's a
to.
lot harder to hire a city manager than it is anybody else.
Well, even outside of that, so some of the, you know, some of the things on that, and this is where I think this is kind of a testament of hiring the city manager. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, and I've heard, you know, quite a bit. Y'all are the stewards of taxpayer dollars, right? And there's a lot to that. There's a lot to be said about that. When it comes to the employees and the staff, you know, it reports and funnels up to the city manager. Y'all hired to be the CEO, and then ultimately y'all are the policymakers. I get it. It is. This is one of those tough things where it's, you know, yeah. Are we going to, you know, is this going to be a hard pill that some are going to have to swallow? 100%. But I think that's where the leadership and the management really comes in to help them explain. Because when we really look at for example, the management positions, they're higher because we have 100 years of tenured experience, you know, among the department staff, or, you know, among the directors. So
Colton, what about this right here? If Donna would like to see $100 a month raise, that's $1,200 a year.
Correct.
Okay,
So
you got 10 positions you're talking about, Donna?
Well, I think there's a couple positions that maybe you left them at zero because they changed positions.
Well,
They're
okay,
at
let's just
zero
use 10
because
as an example.
if they're within-
Let's just use 10.
Yes, there
Okay,
was one that was in a certain position and you moved to a different
Let's just
position. I
use 10 as an
understand that.
example. We're looking at 10 times $1,200. You're up at $12,000. In the scheme of things, that we may just need to make an adjustment down the line too. I mean, that's not a lot of money.
So here,
And
If that would work.
right away, I found that money in Joyce's salary.
yeah.
I mean,
So again, we have the money. We have the money. Here's where the long-term piece comes in. You know, if you look in the far right column, second, you know, just to the left one, if you look there, that's a negative $47,000. That's how much we're over right now in market, based off of the current, you know, proposed rate, based off of longevity and time in position. We have $12,000, we can do it. But then all we're doing is continuing to add on to that negative amount year over year. So then when the next study comes out, we're gonna be in the same boat of at some
We may
point.
have to make an adjustment.
At some point, we gotta pull the Band-Aid.
every year. That's a possibility.
I want to say something, and this is that I'm so happy that we did this study. This is my second term on council, and I honestly do feel like that this conversation's been swept under the rug, and kicked down the road, and this is the first time that I've seen really good objective data that we can hopefully make a unified decision on. But, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the data. What we do with the data is going to be up to us, but I think that being able to look at the city and where we sit on all of our, I think in the past, and I've always felt like sometimes it's been too objective, too subjective, and getting into a kind of a personality competition or whatever you want to call it, but too subjective to where now I personally, I'm able to look at this and look at it in black and white. Whether we decide to give those 10 people, you know, something, I feel your pain there, and I understand that nothing is, 100% of nothing is nothing, and we don't want to give anybody nothing. But I do, it's nice to be able to see where we are, because we've talked about this, at least on my two terms here. We've always talked about there's so much parity between our employees across the board, and now you can actually see it with real data. And I think the information that I'm given, I'm pretty happy with what we
So
decided.
what are your feelings, Robbie? What are you thinking? I mean, what do you stand on this right here? We got Donna's opinion. What's your thought?
I stand wholeheartedly on the data. We had said this once before. I think maybe Bruce did, is like, we need to see what the min and max is, right? I think that was your comment. I mean, I agree. Do you agree that we have it? We've got the min and the max?
We've got the data, now we gotta decide how we're
Right.
gonna dissect it, and what
So-
we're gonna do with it.
So
With the data, we also can see where each person lies.
Yeah.
And I'm good with, well, we haven't made a decision, but I think we need to look at the data and make a decision based on that.
Well, and I think a great compromise, you know, and you know, hearing all sides. Again, tough decisions, you know, all the way around. And I think, you know, to Councilmember Hartman's point on this, is I think where we can have that equitability to make sure that, you know, we continue, that we rip the Band-Aid off, we do what's is truly in the best interest of the taxpayers while moving forward. Again, there's no perfect time to do it, the time is now. So where we can make that do it is like if they're already doing a 50 cent kind of raise for water one, we could take those existing water certifications and we can say, hey, if you have water A, you get another $1,040 per year. If you get water B, you get another. So we can dive into that, or we can implement that now, and then we can do a workshop on actually incentives for degrees, for certifications, for other things. There's a lot of opportunity. The thing I think we have to really focus on is this is the base salary. This is taking everything we've done to simplify a base and kind of move forward from there. This is not the end, this is the beginning.
Well, and I think too, some salaries were taken in the mid-range and pulled over, and others were taken, kind of right in between or whatever, the low and the high. I've already found $6,841 that there's no reason to do an 18% increase in someone who's not going to be here in the budget.
Yeah, and we just wanted to show the conservative numbers on
And
what
then-
it would be if that was the case.
And then the other thing in this is that we are providing for the communications and marketing person. And Joyce is leaving, Dalton said September 30th, so she won't even fall into the next budget.
But we'll have to hire someone to replace her.
Yes, but we wouldn't replace them at a 16-year employee
No, not
He's
necessarily.
increase. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, there's some money right there.
Yeah.
The other thing is the new position, I'm a little concerned about that. I understand it, believe me, I understand Dalton. It'd be wonderful to have somebody to do these things, but reality is, we had our website people, we all got an email from Jimmy, and she is not burnt out. We were all told everybody's burnt out. I'm not hearing that from many of the volunteers, but the reality is if we're paying somebody $55,000 plus benefits, they are going to be doing the official city website. What else are they gonna do? Some handouts, maybe the monthly newsletter. We outsourced the newsletter. We did a newsletter for years and years in the city and outsourced it. I'm concerned about that. We've had two new positions in a year and a half added to the administrative staff. And we moved a part-time to full-time, and she's been full-time for about a year, and I think she could take on some of that extra responsibility. And then we have a grant person that's kind of gone a little more out of finance. I think she was helping with finance. Anyway, we've had two new positions. We've got an excellent accountant there in Cary that we paid extra, and he deserves every penny, and I totally support him being assistant city manager, and that's gonna come at a nice increase for him, well deserved, but he's not gonna start where he started as far as the work that he's had to do to try to catch us up and get us on target with audits and things like that. So we got a great CPA and then we have two new positions in City Hall in a year and a half, and now we're gonna do another position at City Hall, and I'm concerned about it. Of course, we see the need. I'd love to see a planner at City Hall, an engineer at City Hall, but we've got excellent volunteers that handle this type of thing. The website, each individual, Karen Steigner handles all the ladies auxiliary, and Lynn handles all the, I don't think there is a great need in our budget to spend it'd be about $73,000 with benefits. And that's my position on it. And I know a couple people have come forward and said they agree with the position that are residents, but I've also talked to residents that are kind of like, what in the heck are a city of 5,000 gonna have a position like this? I think we could do it in-house with the two extra positions that we have, that we didn't have before. And I know you feel strong about it. I know the council wants to do whatever Dalton wants to say, but I'm uncomfortable with it. I just think,
Well, but, Donna, hold on. You made a comment. I just want to say, one of the volunteers you mentioned that's not burnt out also stood up here or was presented a document that was read to us that was in support of this.
that's
So
what I'm
why don't
saying.
we
There were,
listen?
there were two residents that stood out, but Robbie, what she did say is, I still want to do the website. I want to be in charge of the website. Okay, think of it. Let's fast forward and we have a coordinator. Do you not think a city coordinator is going to handle our publicity and our social media, would not run our website?
Well, yes,
Well, what
I
is
would
the job
agree, but I don't know
description?
that we're taking the volunteers
I'm saying, I think
out of the
we
equation.
would be, Because what would this person do? I would think the main job would be the newsletter and a website.
I mean, there's a lot more to it. I mean,
If it's determined that her job is not supportive and it's not needed, then
well, and so
Here's my
Get rid of
question.
that job,
Let
then,
me say something about this communications person, because whether I'm for it or not for it, that doesn't matter. But, you know, what I wanna see is, how many hours a week is this person gonna have something to do, and what are they doing? I mean, do we really send out that many communications to newspapers, to radio, to the state, to, you know, what's this person gonna be utilized for? You know, just like every position, you have to justify that position, right? There has to be a return on investment. So what do we get for that? And then, yeah, there's other people that I see on here that probably could donate a few hours of time a week to cover whatever those communications might be. But again, you're the city manager, you're the one to tell us what you're gonna utilize this person for.
yeah, absolutely. And like we had kind of talked about, during the the council retreat, is we don't want to get rid of volunteers. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to augment and supplement what they're doing. And so, there's opportunity for insert video, graphic design. There's all the events that we do. There's a coordinating piece that can be a part of these large events and traditions that we do. So here's kind of the cut and dry of it. Initially, we hadn't even really kind of considered it. When I spoke with Jaman, when I spoke with Dorothy, Jimbo, and spoke with others, kind of about, hey, what could this look like? We kind of took the volunteers and said, look, we want to start doing some great things. Dorothy and Jaman were both amped up to get the notification stuff out, and that's great. I mean, the bottom line is, if for some reason they can't do it, it's not getting done. I mean, it's just not going to get done. And
But
so
is this a full-time position, is this a part-time position? That's
so
what you have to.
we would be looking at it as a full-time, communications and marketing is much bigger than just talking on social media and addressing it. These positions, especially in smaller cities, I mean, again, they're gonna fill multiple hats doing multiple things, Again, they're the kind of the liaisons with the events and the vendors, the EDC, there's opportunity to kind of, share that cost with the EDC a little bit, for their kind of marketing efforts. So there's a lot that can be done. And here's the other side of it too. So let's say we don't. Let's say we make a bad decision. We pivot. Just like any other business, any corporation. If a corporation does, has a business, model and it doesn't work, we shift and we pivot. The difference between a corporation and us is obviously our constituent and customer base exists already. Where in a corporation, you're trying to find your target market.
What about Dalton? Okay, because we know we're looking at replacing Joyce.
Mhm.
Okay, you've got Amanda full-time now, where she was part-time, and Catherine is in a totally different position of grants. And why couldn't that person be the one that replaced Joyce with others picking up that slack? That way that would be a nice compromise, and the person, whoever you hire, could also pick up some of the slack for the ladies. There's times when they're super busy. But why can't we, and I'm thinking of dollars once again, but instead of replacing Joyce with, well, we're never gonna replace Joyce, let's put that out there. I mean, she's an incredible human being. But whoever we replace her with, the salary that she has, can what Joyce was doing be absorbed by a couple of new positions that we have, and then have somebody to concentrate on that. And then to Bruce's point, if this person says, hey, I've got a lot of extra time here, there's projects that they can do in administration to help out, and not hire another Joyce and a marketing.
And
What
those
are those thoughts?
And so those are some of the things that we absolutely can look at. Again, we did, kind of talking about, the hiring piece. I want to clarify that. We went back to 2018-19 and started looking at payroll for full-time employees or FTE equivalents, full-time equivalents. 2018-19, 31 total. 19-20, 30 plus 1 vacant, 31 total. 21-22, 30 plus 2 vacant, 32. 2022-2023, 30 plus 2 vacant, plus the 3 new, 35. So if we really look at kind of the city over the past 5 years, from what we've done now to what we've done then, in a way, we're really just trying to catch up with, with kind of what we're looking at. In these realignments that we're doing, like little realignments, for example, one of the big things that we talked about when I first came on board was going to a a once-a-month paycheck. That was one of the first things that I remember hearing was, they're like, we're going to a once-a-month paycheck. And I'm like, oh God, this is about to be terrible. And so it basically came out to where, an employee, a team member, couldn't handle it. The responsibility, again, the workload was too great. So instead of panicking and figuring it out, what do? We realigned those positions. We took what we had and the resources that we had and we realigned them. And so going forward, same thing. As we start implementing payroll, as we start implementing, these digital systems that are going to help be more efficient. For example, the utility billing position, that'll be open in September. We don't intentionally plan on hiring anybody right away. We might bring in a part-time, because the cost, stays low. But we want to kind of see how we manage. We're not going to just jump at the quickest opportunity to bring somebody in. Again, we're looking at how do we be the best stewards of the taxpayer dollars too. So we want to see what we can and can't do with, and that's a great example of using that communications and marketing person. How can we use them for multiple things? Because what happens is, and we actually got this data from the volunteers in their pursuit of doing what they're doing, is we're getting information, we are getting data, and we are starting to see a lot of pain points in everything that we've done. Code Red is a great example. It's a great tool that we don't even have to pay for. The county pays for it. Joanne and Dorothy want to kick that thing off. We're not ready. We don't have the bandwidth to continue to take on these little things. And so by having a communications and marketing person, no, I don't want them to take over the website. They're going to be stewards with the volunteers.
What I think we're looking at here is that, the way I'm looking at it right here, we've got this money allocated. It just depends on how you want to allocate the money that we appropriate. So some of it may be used for so-and-so and so-and-so, part here, part there. I think what we need to do is look at the overall picture and let Dalton decide how he's going to allocate it.
Well,
If we don't agree with it, then we need to look at it to sit back and after it's all said and done. But they say he may have a part-time job for one, part for another. However we allocate, may not use somebody, may not replace somebody for a while. So,
Yeah,
but we can sit here and we can't minimize or kind of micromanage each individual.
I don't think, when you're
And I
talking
don't
about a
like
brand
that.
new position in a city, I don't think that's micromanaging. It's not micromanaging, that's what Bruce said, we're not micromanaging, we're saying, I think it could be a compromise. And then, you know what? If this person blows it out of the water and we find, oh my gosh, we are utilizing this person 40 hours a week, just blowing it out of the water, you know what? You come back and you say, hey, look what this person is. Right now, we don't even have a job description. We don't even know what the person's going to be doing. So they blow it out of the water. Why not come back to us at that point and say, hey, you know what? I got to have another choice because this person's got to dedicate all this time to this. Or we're writing so many grants that Catherine's got to do 100% grant writing. Or Amanda's we're doing so many property, building permits that Amanda is being blown out of the water. We need another person. That's where the management comes in. All I'm asking you is let's make a compromise. Let's not put on an additional $55,000. I mean, you can start them at the position you want, decide what you need. What I'm saying is, would you consider absorbing that salary because we have two other positions that we never had to absorb some of the extra
Yeah,
stuff.
and that's kind of the intent. So, if this position got approved, we're not going to go hire just 2 new people and say, hey, welcome to Morpheus Point. We're going to assess the process and bring them in. In that type of position, to get the full benefit out of it, in my opinion, and from my experiences, in cities that, have events, that have, programs, that have, some type of, not just residents, but, outside communication, it's a full-time position. It really is. And it's a compliment to, to the volunteers. And if the position got approved, we would have, some volunteers on the interview, process. Again, we're not, just like we talked about at the tree, we're not trying to get rid of the volunteers. But what we don't want is we don't want to drag our successes in the rear by not being able to keep up and sustain it. For example, one of the utility billing positions, does a lot of our HR stuff. That's something that we had talked about a long time ago. And so we're now getting that person who has an interest in HR, kind of that added responsibility. So for the current staff that we have, and I think the compromise would be kind of absorbing that position and seeing where it goes. And then if we, see some gaps, just like the utility billing position that we had, we saw some gaps. The position was funded. So when we rolled one of the positions out into a newly kind of created position, we left that position vacant in a part-time role for a long time. It was a little bit easier. We definitely got, a diamond in the rough with it. But with very unique skill sets like the communications and marketing piece, nobody can just pick it up and do it. of those things that that you can just go in and say, hey, I'm gonna be a communications and marketing person. Especially if you find somebody that can do graphic design and video editing and, you know, in marketing the
Can
city.
you
and
give a
just,
job description so we can see?
That's what I would like to see.
And we don't have anything, we don't have a clue what this person
Is a job
will do,
description
and
in
so to
writing
consider it a
before
position.
we even fill the job.
And then go to a
Yeah, the job
comparable city
description-
that has like one of those positions?
yeah, and so the job description, we haven't wrote it yet. It'll be, I don't know, I don't think we wrote it, but it'll be written before, you know, before it gets hired, definitely.
No, one of the things, we keep putting out that salary at 55, that's putting them at a ratio of 1.07.
Yeah, and
Can
the only.
you hire somebody at the proposed minimum range?
And no, great point, thank you on that one. So when we budgeted the 55, this is a great example of us guessing on salaries.
Yeah.
We didn't have the study when we kind of threw the number out there. We were kind of, you know, looking between whether it was gonna be a communications and marketing coordinator or a director, depending on the need and the direction we wanted to go. That 55, we kept it plugged in because that was what was budgeted and the amount on the balanced budget. So yes, you're 100% right. We have money in there that we can play with. The money is not the issue.
Okay, we need to resolve this right here. Everybody's got to voice their
Yes, I
opinion.
don't need to resolve.
We
I
need
think,
a job
I mean, I think
description.
Dalton's on the
Yeah,
right
would
track.
we do this right here? Can we, right now, here's my suggestion would be, let's pull the communications director out of the budget right now. Pull it out. Let's get a job description. We're gonna have some excess funds coming in from some of the people that be retiring and different things right there. Let's look at it, and once we get the job description. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, and I think see what your needs are in regards to utilizing staff members that you have.
We're gonna sit and
Hey,
ride this horse
the
and not
current
getting
staff
anywhere.
members are at
Let's
low,
get
so
something done.
They don't know, the current staff members don't have the
I
experience.
think we are getting something done. This
Yeah,
is-
that's what I think, we're getting something done now.
And I would like to see, like I said, I realize that I'm not exactly comfortable with these ranges anyway, because we're like in a lower range and some are in the midpoint range. But I really do not want to see anyone in a time where we're prospering, and you've done such an excellent job, Dalton and Carrie, and the staff of the money and the funds and everything, and we're doing so well, that we don't give somebody a raise. I think anybody in business, if I went to my guys and said, hey, we're doing great, our company's doing fantastic, but you know what, I'm freezing you, because we're paying you more than we do the other exterminator.
And so, this is a great time where, you know, the caveat to it is,
But you gotta
this
keep
is kind
that
of a great
percentage
example, it's gonna
for the number.
continue to happen. Now, that being said, that's my only, you know, counsel to counsel from the city manager. It's gonna be a can that's gonna get kicked down the road, and at some point in time, this is gonna happen. So what does council want to do to
Well, Dalton, next year, it
mitigate
may be that the economy is
That's
back
better.
on track with the you know, that the raises are more minimal. And everybody, think about it, next year's not gonna look the same. You know, you're not gonna get a 20% increase.
Yeah.
You know, you'll get a good, you know, I'm sure you'll be here getting money, but some of the positions that went up to these 18, 20, 23 to get them in line, we're not going up that high next year. So I think we can absorb it, and I think it sends a great message to our employees, and I think it sends a bad message with a zero. So I'm just
So
saying,
if we
I'd like
look
us
at,
to.
if we look at the $100 a month raise for the number that you pulled out, whatever it is, 8 or 10, and we put hold on the communications director, pull that out completely, are we good with the rest of the budget?
I think that's fine, but I honestly don't want to see that, maybe reduce that salary in the communication director, because we don't want to
Well,
unplug our
if we
money.
don't, if we pull it out, there's not a number in there.
Well,
So
why don't we just
once
do
he
the
gets the
lower
job
end?
description, we'll have to
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah, let's
We'll have to look at it.
well,
Get it in there, get
well,
the
Dennis,
lower
let's
end.
lower, like
Or
Sean
do
and
that.
Sean and I are saying, let's lower, because we want to keep money in there.
Okay,
So,
okay, but leave it lower
Okay,
down.
so,
but between that position
what
lowering
percentage?
and Joyce's, because she won't be here,
it?
we've got the
Hold on,
12,000.
I'm lost, hold on, let's slow down for a second.
She doesn't want to pull it completely out, she just
Pull
wants
what-
to
pull
go to the
what?
minimum
Okay,
range. The communication
okay.
director.
yeah, the salary that
Go
you
down to the
have,
minimum range.
Minimum
yeah,
range.
55.
we've established
Yeah,
that's
Hold on,
over.
so hold on, real quick, I wanna kind of, so let's, for a sec, let's go back to this. So let's go back to this sheet real quick. If council starts diving into dictating the minimum versus where they are on the threshold, in my opinion, y'all have every right to do that if you want. But the range is designed to be a range that management uses as a tool to figure out where they fall based off of those experiences.
Okay, well, the mid-range was what, 51? when I looked, I saw
Yeah,
51.
51.
51, we've got it budgeted for 55.
Yeah.
Keep it in there for a placeholder so that we don't have to go scrounging around for money.
Mhm.
Okay, that gives us another 4,000, and we've got 6,000 something. So right there's 10,000, and I'm sure you can look and we can pull another 2,000.
So what is, and going back to the other positions, for the zero. So we roughly have a basis to cover of about $47,000, kind of under. So if we add $100 a month, to each of the folks that are zero, is that what council wants to do?
What's the percentage though?
What?
Regardless
I mean, the percentage is a moot point, because all we're doing is basically, all we're doing, if by adding any, so let me kind of back up, and this is where I think, to the point of, some of those that may get zero, if they have the license certifications, again, that could be $2,000 a year, $3,000 a year. So we could ideally use the incentives in their license as an opportunity instead of.
I think it needs to be considered separately. If they do the license, that should be something, regardless if we give them a raise or not.
No, I agree 100%.
So
I
I really
agree
think,
100%.
I'm gonna go with Don on this. Let's do the $12,000, $100 a month on whatever the 10 or 12 that were not getting a raise, with whoever they were, whatever position. Okay? And then we're gonna keep the communications director in there at a minimum range, right?
Yeah,
50 or
mid-range,
whatever.
mid-range,
That we would like to have a
mid-range.
job description before it's funded, or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that agreeable to everybody? Could they all live with that, with this budget?
For a placeholder, the money was
Placeholder.
placeholder, yeah. And then look at the job description.
Maybe they're not filling a position, maybe we can't get it for a year.
Is this something you can live with, Robbie?
So what did we outline, or what did we say on the ones that are at zero right now?
We're gonna do $100 a month, and there's evidently 10 of them, right?
10 of them.
Is that gonna be is that gonna be a salary increase, or are we gonna call it a COLA? Because if you
We
do
can
a
figure
salary
out-
increase,
You can have her,
It's gonna, no matter
Next year,
what you do, it's gonna, next year it'll be back.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Next year, the COLA may be 2%, 3%. We're not gonna be doing 18%, 16%, 19%,
what we're Robbie saying, if it's a COLA, it may not be reoccurring
Yeah.
next year.
No, but
So
the,
its
but
salary
the
will
COLA,
be.
like, so, for example, every year you add a COLA, it takes this sheet right here, and takes that COLA and adjusts everything by that COLA. So what we'll do, and really what's gonna ultimately end up happening, we're now nickel and diming those positions. And so we're gonna take this range that we would be on kind of that step, and we're gonna go through, and on these individual ones, we're gonna be now adjusting those ranges, which now are not gonna fall in line.
No, I just think
We just, that way, just would be sure that everybody gets something.
next year, we're in a different world, we're in a different ballgame. We've got our salaries caught up. Right now, the majority of positions are at 92%. Fire and police, we've got them in the 90s, correct, Dalton, with the new raises? So we're gonna have everybody in the 90s, so you know what, next year is a different ballgame, folks. We are up there with
Okay.
the good cities,
So,
so we won't have
So
all
we
these
okay on that,
increases.
on what we're talking about? Is that agreeable to
What's our
everybody?
annualized turnover percentage?
With the average, we don't have the actual percentage. So, I mean, we tried diving back as far as, employees. Data keeping was not very great on the HR realm.
Say in the last 2 years?
Trying to think, each part, maybe,
We probably lost 5 or 6 over the last 2 years, so roughly about 10% a year. If you say roughly over about 30 people.
4 in 2 years, so roughly about that.
Okay, I'd like to,
So-
since we talked about it, I'm sorry, Rich, you got another question. Go
I
ahead.
had one more thing, is that, and I don't know, there's no names to these numbers, and I don't wanna know a name. I'm just looking at one thing right here, and water operators, I mean, I'm seeing a large variance in those salary ranges there. I mean, were there,
So-
to your knowledge, were there different certification, I mean, what?
Nope. So the downside to not having turnover is you have tenure, and guess what?
Well, no, this was the first one-year employee.
I think years of
Oh,
experience, you talked about experience.
so that's a great example of we were making an educated guess without having a range that we couldn't operate in. That's a great example of somebody getting paid more that we just didn't know.
I wanted the min-max range,
Yeah.
I've always been.
So that one was a position where we made an educated guess, working with the directors to try to see what the market, kind of did. And that was one that ultimately Now, again, that was the chief operator, position, but yeah, it's one of those, so like on the mid max thing, this is like, where the management comes in, this is where our policies, kind of come into play. If we bring somebody in, we could decide kind of where they fall in, but really for me, I'm big on no more than, step 5 if you have, certain steps, or based off of how many steps. So on a 20-year step, I don't like to go above step 5. That way, you have the min and the max, and if they, depending on what experience they have, then you can kind of adjust them on that range, and fluctuate them, as needed.
That could be in your department, because you're the city manager.
And that's where the, that's where the equitability.
So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna approve the budget based on the information we just had. We're gonna move on from there. So, do I hear a motion? And I need to have it
You
explained.
kind of want all that.
I want you to say what it is.
Who wants to put all that in a
Let's
motion?
put it right.
And really, I mean,
Put it in there and tell
really
me
for
put
the
it in there.
workshop.
Do you want me to put it in there?
No, I'm
So,
good. I'm good, and y'all correct me if there's something I've left
Yeah.
out.
Again,
For the workshop piece, y'all don't need a motion. The only motion would be is just to postpone the budget until,
No, we're not gonna kick it down the road. We're here.
What?
we're not postponing it.
Yeah,
Well,
we're
that's a
kicking it down.
council, that's a.
We still think so.
We're kicking it down the road.
Did we have on the agenda do we have on the agenda the budget passing it tonight too, or just?
We put it on there just in
Study?
case, so yeah,
Okay.
so the two things that would be a motion on the budget would be a record vote on the budget if you'll want to adopt it, and then a ratified tax rate, which says that the budget is built on a 58-cent tax rate, and it's also a record vote, so two separate votes.
And I know we'll vote separate on the tax rate, but we can include that in that.
Correct.
So, okay.
And it's
y'all
just
jump in
and just to be
there.
clear, it's just a ratification of it, which is what we need to do the public notices. So
Okay.
it's not, you're not adopting the tax rate tonight, it's just a ratification vote that says this budget is built off of
This
this.
budget is based on, okay. So y'all jump in there if there's anything I left out or misunderstood you. Okay, so I would like to move that we adopt the budget based on the .58 tax rate. In addition to it, in the composition study, those that had no increase receive $100 a month increase, with the exception of a brand-new employee or one that changed positions. And, what was it? And get a job, and we'll have a job description of the grant person that you'll bring to us. We'll hold a whole place at mid-range for that position. And then come back with the communication.
It was,
I'm sorry,
Communication.
communication coordinator, thank you, Sean, and thank you, Bruce. But keep money in there at the mid-range to hold that amount of money.
Do I hear a second?
I second that motion.
Say it back,
Would you
Larry.
repeat it, Larry? Repeat it for us,
Say
please.
it back, Larry.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second, and we've had plenty of discussion.
We have.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, now do we need to make another, we included the 58 cent.
It'll be a ratification,
Ratification.
yeah, basically ratifying the tax rate says that it's built on a 58-cent tax rate, so it has to be two separate votes.
Okay, I need a motion on that. The ratification of the
Make
58
a
cent.
motion for the tax ratification,
58 cent.
58 cents.
So do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
You want to second it? Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank y'all for hanging with us on that one. It gets painful, doesn't it? And we're really all friends up here.
Don't get a repeat to executive session.
We just had it in there just in case we needed it.
In that case, folks, I hear a motion to adjourn.
We're completely finished.
I make a motion.
I guess that's all of it, isn't it?
Thank y'all for bearing with us. Thanks for coming. Thank you very much for we have to fly towards your.
Neither one of us can stay, keep it going.
You good? We gotta get somewhere. I'm gonna go something. Hey, we're trying to get the stake on
Keep us on track. I'm glad.